Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and as Malcolm would say, friends and enemies, it is I, Greg White, the Catawba Valley Aboriginal. You are listening to the Chronicles of Chaos. Today, I would like to speak to you a moment about a subject I just thought about. It's called muscle memory. But first, let me preface this by saying that regardless of all this hype and a lot of this nonsense going on, the beefing between the FBA and ADOS online, that's just online bullshit. I don't get into all that. It's personality cults I've never been a part of. I have subscribed and unsubscribed to Yvette Carnell probably 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. The reason I subscribed is because she's an intelligent person and she brings up subjects that I like to hear about and if possible do something about in the community. Give her credit for resurrecting the discussion about lineage and bloodline and reparations, of course. And but she tends to every now and every few weeks, months, or whatever, she'll get into this kick of generational gang banging, and that's a problem with me. That's a problem. That's disunifying, and it's unnecessary, and it's not really realistic. I mean, if your claim for a justice claim and reparations is based on injury inflicted on prior generations since slavery by a policy of benign neglect or intentionally targeting ADOS, American descendants of slavery, through legislation and government decree, things of that nature, crimes of omission and commission, then what you're saying is that the government is responsible for your condition. But then to turn around and say, complain about what the boomers did or didn't do for succeeding generations runs counter to your own narrative. You can't have it both ways. Either the baby boomers grew up in La La Land and Candy Land and everything was sweet and given to them and all this, and they should have saved up for the next generation. Or they too were victims and have a claim for justice just like the newer generations. You can't have it both ways. Because if you're saying it's their fault, then the government can wash its hands. There's no need to give reparations because you have done what white people say we would do if we got reparations. You're saying they just threw it all away, as if they had anything to work with to start with. So anyway, I just put that out there not to attack Ms. Carnell or anything, but just to say that the generational gang banging is counterproductive and it's divisive, schismatic within our own community. It's not going to do anybody any good. But muscle memory. When a lot of these killings in Mississippi and Louisiana were taking place in recent years, the brother was selling CDs, the brothers in Texas, I started thinking that there was something in the way that our community was being treated by law enforcement that was reminiscent of what was going on during slavery. Not that I was around during slavery. I'm like you. I'm a student. And so what was happening was that every time the cops would kill some unarmed person for some crazy reason, and get away with it, not be charged, not be indicted. I was able to go back into the 1724 Louisiana Code Noir. That was a slave code that was originated in Haiti and adopted later on by the state of Louisiana. At the time, it was still a French colony. And lo and behold, black person selling anything without master's permission. Capital punishment. Slave selling or slave in possession of a firearm. Capital punishment. Slave striking and or drawing blood from a white man. Capital punishment. So what was happening was that the courts were affirming what was not in current statute by their actions. The court, the prosecutor's offices, district attorneys were still enforcing slave codes in interaction between whites and blacks in the South. And on social media, I was trying to make that point, give that point across. I just started doing videos because I've never looking for notoriety or anything like that. So, but when and because people in the community, different communities, even the conscious community, cover a lot of subjects very well. So there's never any need for me to jump in and give my 2 cents. But when I see something that's not being covered, but I think should be covered, then yeah, I'll bust out a video and see where it goes. Have it here for posterity, more or less. I'm not looking for a bunch of followers or anything. Having said that, I want to talk about muscle memory for a minute. Muscle memory is an occurrence or phenomenon that takes place when you use a particular muscle or set of muscles repetitively. When you're doing push-ups, first few times you start doing push-ups, have a workout routine, it hurts, you get sore. Can't pick your arms up sometimes. But if you continue with it, then when you start seeing results, that's something you usually continue with. It gets a lot easier. You don't have to strain to do push-ups. It's almost automatic. Your muscles have what is called a memory. You get in a certain position, certain angle, and start doing it, your body automatically reacts. Or say learn to shoot a pistol. First you start out trying to pull the trigger and you're going high all the time. Then you learn to squeeze it. And the more you practice it, the more proficient you become at it. It's muscle memory, okay? Muscle memory. It allows human beings to be able to perform a task more efficiently and effectively with greater repetition. But muscle memory as a concept, I believe, also extends to groups of people, to organizations, to systems. I give the example of, and let me say this first, and one thing I've always learned is that repetition, or success rather, breeds repetition and imitation, okay? Success encourages repetition and breeds imitation. When you're watching a football game, for example, and you see a team that's having success running up the middle because the other team can't really stop it, a wise coach will do what? He'll keep running that ball up the middle until the other team figures out how to stop it. If you're having success throwing long, like LSU was against Clemson the other night, when you see that same matchup on the same position down the sideline, the D-back can't keep up with him, then you keep on drilling. And they did that. They had a lot of success with it, and they kept on doing it. Because if you can't stop it, if they can't stop it, if your opposition can't counter what you're doing, then you keep doing it. That's common sense. But it also extends to organizations. In the 1960s, and actually probably had roots in the 50s because they were doing things prior to that with different organizations, but they hadn't called it. But in the 60s, they called it COINTELPRO, and I'm speaking of the FBI, where they would go on campaigns of disinformation and misinformation. They would employ people, often police officers or agents, people that had allegiance to the cause of the FBI, to infiltrate organizations and to either stir up dissension or to quash movements within that movement for the benefit of the FBI, who thought they were acting on behalf of the United States government. You know, they were always in any organization that had strong leadership. Well, we already know that J. Edgar Hoover said that the greatest threat to the stability of the United States of America was the rise of a black messiah. That's why he targeted Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and various leaders, various Panthers. That's why Fred Hampton was assassinated. That's why all these things took place. So I was watching Tony Brown's Journal a long time ago. This was while it was still a current show being run on PBS, I believe. And Tony Brown's Journal, if you don't remember, was there was a guy from the West Coast, I believe, named Tony Brown, who had a TV show, and to this day, it is probably one of the best TV shows. He was one of the best hosts and interviewers that you'll ever see. And if you have access to that show, I recommend that you check out the old tapes and things of that nature. But he was interviewing a black FBI agent, one of the few that they had ever employed at the time. And he was asking about COINTELPRO. And Tony Brown asked something to the effect of, well, now that COINTELPRO has been exposed, what do you think they'll do next in regards to the black community? And the agent just looked at him and said, COINTELPRO, whatever you think about it, was successful. What makes you think they're going to stop doing something they had success with? Muscle memory. White supremacy remembers what has brought them success. You see, you can talk all the trash you want to about white supremacy and white supremacists and how evil they are, how bad they are, how immoral, unethical, blah, 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 all that. The bottom line is the United States of America is the greatest economic engine on the planet. It's the greatest military force the world has ever seen. And yes, it took white supremacy to get there. The question is, what makes you think they're going to abandon any of their basic principles just because they've been exposed? Success breeds repetition. So when we're talking to people, especially white supremacists, let's not waste time trying to debate or tell them what their ancestors did as if they don't know. They know better than you know. The difference is that they celebrate it. You know, we want to make people feel guilty. No, guilt doesn't work with these people. We already know that. Why? They didn't become successful by being guilty or feeling guilty. They got successful by exercising power. And the unity of the black man and black woman in America is our only source of power. If we want to obtain redress for past grievances, we have to exercise our power by any means necessary. But the means have to be reasonable and justified in making us or bringing us closer to our goal of economic independence. Now, the ADOS movement is focused squarely on the politics. I understand. But having politics without economics or economic base or commitment to black economics is like a thirsty man in the desert. He's doing dances and praying and singing and just hoping it rains. And finally, after he's near death, it begins to rain. A storm comes and it rains, and he opens his mouth and he drinks and he drinks and he drinks. And then the storm is gone, and the next day, the motherfucker's thirsty again. Why? Because when the rain finally came, he didn't have a bucket to keep it in. That's what black economics is. It's a bucket. It is the way that we are going to ensure our security and prosperity for our posterity. If we get money today, say we get checks for $350,000 a piece, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to spend it? Who are we going to spend it with? How is it going to stay in the community? And most of all, how is it going to contribute to the security of our seed and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren? Denial of economics, of black economics, is almost traitorous in the sense that we are expending all this energy trying to obtain or trying to close the wealth gap, trying to get a little piece of the rock. Our ancestors contributed $14 trillion to the United States economy uncompensated for between 1776 and 1865. We are due, we are owed. But using our political power to get compensation and then not having any way to hold that compensation and make it work for us is just short-sighted. At best, it's short-sighted. At worst, it is trickery. So I'm going to continue to ride with the identity movement. Foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slavery, 1865ers, those of us who believe that we became an ethnic group with the passage of the 14th Amendment in 1865, which made us citizens. I'm going to keep riding with the identity because we've always had this identity, but I like the fire. I like the assertiveness that it's showing. But on the other hand, any movement that does not include economics, does not include a bucket for the windfall, is something I can't take seriously. Anyway, that's all the time I've got now. I love you, and I'm out.